Good morning, gentlemen. You are listening to Man Talk Monday on the Gird Up Podcast. Glad that you're with us. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, if you've been listening for a while, well, God bless you, and I hope that we are continuing to be a blessing to you on your journey of Christian manhood. Now, this podcast was put together because I, as a man, and some of the men around me in my life, including Jay Fry here, looked around and said, we are not the men that we want to be, and we want to be the men God created us to be, and we want to share that journey with other people. We want to share the things that the Lord is laying on our hearts with you guys. So thank you for the opportunity to do that. I pray that these podcasts are a blessing to you and that they help you grow in faith and knowledge of the truth. If you want to be closer to us, if you want to be a part of what we're doing, you can follow us on social media. You can do that on Instagram or Facebook. All that information is at the end of the podcast. If you would like to support us financially, you can do that either on Patreon, or you can do that by sponsoring an episode or two or several. If you have any thoughts, suggestions, or any ideas on how else you can be of assistance to us, feel free to contact us and we can have a conversation about it. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your love and support. I pray that this ministry is effective and that you are growing just like we are. So thank you, guys. God bless you. Enjoy our show today. You'll hear us right after a word from our sponsor.
Hello, this is Seth and Jenna Herlick, and we are also known as Him and Her Worship.
We are also the creators of the What Do I Know podcast, where we talk about life while having very little life experience ourselves.
We are a normal couple passionate about lighting hearts on fire for Jesus, who just happen to play music.
We write our own original worship music, and we play in churches all around the country, and we'd love to connect with you.
We have lots of ways for you to do that. On Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, we are at Him and Her Worship, and we have a website, and we are himandherworship.com.
Also, check out our podcast at Apple Podcasts and other streaming platforms.
God bless you. Thanks so much for your time, and we cannot wait to meet you in person.
You are listening to the Gird Up Podcast. To gird up is an ancient way of preparing oneself for hard work or a battle ahead. Our work is to reclaim masculinity in the modern world and to live out our calling as men of God. Here you will find a community of believers working hard to become the men that God created us to be. Now it's time to roll up your sleeves and let's get to work. I'm Charlie Ungemak.
And I'm Jason Fry.
And you are listening to Man Talk Monday on the Gird Up Podcast. Again, we are outside on the beautiful Fry property here. It's good stuff, man. Good stuff.
I'd like to think that this is my property. Like,
well,
let's just
you pay the rent.
For the day, I pay the rent. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's another beautiful sunny day, and
it's gorgeous.
Absolutely. This is a really good idea that Charlie had.
Yeah, just being out here and sitting in the sun. Yeah, this is awesome.
I was gonna drag you down. We were gonna record in the awful looking basement at the house here.
Yeah, we talked about lobsters. I think I made this joke during last week's episode, but we were talking about we're gonna become lobsters sitting out here in the sun. Probably.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, our rule for the day, Jordan. We're going through Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Rule number 2 today, which is treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. You want to start us off, Jay Fry?
Oh man, like we just started talking about this, and I feel like everyone, especially, and I not that I'm picking on Charlie, but just teachers, right? Like think of like the best teacher you've ever had, right? For some kids out there, it's Mr. Charlie Ungemak.
That's right.
The best teacher they've ever had.
Gosh darn it, you're right.
The best teacher in the world. But like, what did that teacher do, right? Like that teacher poured themselves into you, right? Like they were available at all hours of the day, right? They stayed past the time that they were supposed to stay at school. They took their work home with them, right? What do those teachers oftentimes how do they actually break this rule, this treat yourself like someone that you are responsible?
Well, they burn out. They don't last for very long.
Right.
They don't last for very long. They have short careers. Yeah. Either that or they find out how to make this rule happen and they find a way to do it. But you're right. I think it's really easy to forget that your quality of life is directly related to the quality of your work. and the quality of relationships. So if you don't take the time to make sure that you are physically, emotionally, and spiritually healthy, then you are going to shoot yourself in the foot as far as any work and relationships and health goes.
Yeah. I mean, I just think of, there's been times in my life, and I'm sure there's you fellas out there can relate to this, especially as, if you have got a family to support, maybe you're the only one working, where you feel like you have to take all your time to make sure that you're taking care of the people in your life that you're responsible for taking care of, right? Well, in that process, if you were like me, where over a period of, maybe a year or two, you weren't getting very good sleep, you weren't eating well because you were just eating whatever you could get your hands on in the moment, and maybe you were, like for some of you guys, and like, me personally, like maybe you got a problem with, like, maybe you started drinking a little bit too much, right? Because like you get home, you worked all day, the kids are in bed, and that just became the norm, right? And then all of a sudden you're, 50, 60 pounds overweight, and you realize you haven't been taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Like that, I feel like there's a lot of guys out there, and people, not just guys, but people out there that they feel like they're only being productive if they're doing something for someone else. But if you don't take time, right? Like, if you extrapolate that process out, if you don't take time to take care of yourself, pretty soon you won't be able to take care of anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Jordan Peterson talks about the idea that some people don't even believe, like, the real reason behind this is people don't believe that they are important enough to be taken care of. So they actually value other people higher than they value themselves. And he talks about Jesus saying, love your neighbor as yourself. And he was making the argument that a lot of times, especially in Christian circles, and particularly in the Western world, we actually take that too far, and we treat other people better than we treat ourselves. Like you force your kids to eat veggies, but then you eat garbage.
Hey,
you only let your.
Let's not
Sorry,
talk
I
about
shouldn't
me.
Be looking at you. I'll look at the goat while I say this.
We just ate vegetables at my house. I made Charlie eat some
He
vegetables.
fed me. It was good. Yeah, he made. I actually said I haven't eaten veggies for a couple of days, and he gave me some veggies. So
I feel like that. I feel like you just bit the hand that fed you, Charlie.
I'm so sorry, man.
Never been this mad.
I apologize.
Anyway, what were you saying?
I don't know. Well,
no, like essentially it's almost like, so Jesus said love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
And if you were really honest with yourself, you're like, man, my neighbor would think I'm a jerk to him if I, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
if I treated him the way I treat myself.
If I treated him the way I treat myself, right? Like,
yeah.
And
Well, he was even talking about like your pets, like your dog has a limp, you take it to the vet, but you break your ankle and you refuse to go to the doctor. Like that's that thing. How many stories? Like,
that'll
if
buff
it wouldn't be a cliche if it didn't happen all the time, Right. So the idea that self-care is actually vitally important, and cannot be avoided. It's something that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think without going too far down here, but I feel like this is directly connected. I think because especially like as Christians, you sometimes can get yourself into a mindset that, man, I'm a sinner, but Jesus died for me. And sometimes you can focus too much on the fact of like recognizing your sins to a point where the devil actually gets a foothold in you and says like, yeah, Jesus forgave everyone their sins, but man, you did some really awful things, right? And all of a sudden you travel down this path of low self-worth and feel like you're not worthy of anything. And then the only good that's in your life is the good that you pour into others, right? And then, but you're slowly eating yourself away inside. And like, this is the passage everyone knows, right? John 3:16, but it said, God so loved the world, right?
Yeah.
Like, and everyone is part of the world.
Including you.
Exactly. So if if you are someone that is really just, you think you're just down and out and feel like you're not worthy of anyone's love, just remember, like, someone thought that you were worthy enough to die for, right? And as Christians, Jordan Peterson talks about how, you have some intrinsic value, but like to take that a step further from a biblical standpoint, like you have eternal value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's the devil getting a foothold telling you're not worthy. Like you certainly are, right?
Yeah.
Like Jesus died for you, man.
Yeah. And well, to balance that out with some solid law here, there is always a consequence for every action, right? And so when I choose to treat myself less than I ought to be treated. If I don't treat myself the way I do care for the people around me and take care of the people around me, if I don't treat myself well, eventually there's going to be consequences for that down the road. Whether it's like having a breakdown and essentially throwing a pity party and saying, nobody loves me, nobody cares about me, although that actually could happen, frankly. I know it's scary, but when you treat yourself like the garbage, it's a lot easier to be taken care of. I'm sorry, not taken care of, taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
And you start putting yourself in vulnerable positions. But whether it's that like mental breakdown where you just, get tired of serving everybody and all of a sudden you get all this self-righteous, I do all this for you and you don't do anything for me. And yeah. Or it's just like when you're 50 years old, you got all kinds of health problems because you didn't take the time to go for a walk when you were 30, like there are consequences for everything. And so positive or negative. So putting yourself in positions so that the consequences of your actions down the road are positive consequences instead of those negative ones too.
Well, and I was just talking to Charlie about a coworker friend of mine who's he has worked like 40 days straight. I think it's probably more, but he's worked 40 days straight. But he also in his schedule he gets 2 days scheduled off per week. So that means that he has voluntarily worked days that he should have been taken off, and he's like sick right now. Like he's got this really nasty cold, and he's like super like mentally exhausted. And we were talking the other day, and he's like, "Gosh, I'm so run down." I'm like, "You haven't taken a day off in like 40 days, and you did that to yourself." And I just kind of smiled at him, like, "You kind of did that to yourself." And he's like, "Yeah, I know." I'm like, and it's just like what you said. There will come a point where if you don't stop for a moment to take care of yourself, you will not be able to take care of the people that you want to take care of.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and I would venture to say, when he does take a day off, he's probably sitting at home saying, "Man, I'm so lazy,"
Oh,
like
right.
there's probably
Yeah,
a voice in
absolutely.
his head telling him, because he's got that warped sense of purpose and identity that says, "Hey, like you're being lazy right now."
Oh, right. Like,
So
I could be at work right now.
Yeah, right, exactly. So let's get practical on this.
Absolutely.
What does this look like in our daily lives? How do you? So I'm a single guy, so I don't have that hard of a time being able to take a break. Although I found that if I'm watching,
I think it's harder for you.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I mean, I have to be really intentional about like not reading a book and not watching TV, because I don't watch a lot of garbage TV. So when I am watching TV, it's like a documentary or something that's like hefty, and that really is still working, especially since I'm a teacher and a podcaster. It's a really cerebral world where every piece of information you're taking in has a direct application in your vocation, right?
Yeah,
in your job.
absolutely.
So being really intentional about that. I think the easiest way I do it in the summer is I go fishing and I don't take my phone with me.
Yeah.
And my grandma is not always super excited about that when she knows I'm out on the boat without a phone. But
What happens if
like,
you fall in the water?
right, I'll swim, Grandma. What happens if you're unconscious? If I end up in the water unconscious while I was all alone on the boat, it's just over.
I'm in a much better
You'll
place
see
than you
me-
are.
You'll
Yeah.
see me in eternity. But like that like, it's easy for me to do like right now. And then also the other thing that I've realized is, especially during the school year, if I'm going and I go to the gym too much and work too hard in the gym
Gotcha.
and don't take enough time off to recover, that can become one of those burdensome things too. So when I even though all your YouTube, sensation motivational speakers will tell you, if you really want it that bad, you won't even sleep. You need to sleep
You need to
sooner or
sleep.
later. Yeah.
Right.
So like on days where I pull into the parking lot and just go, I don't want to do this, I don't do it.
Right.
I just take a day off and then I go in the next day. So especially when it's something like that I really truly love and enjoy, there's a recognition there that if I'm not enjoying something that I love, there's something needs to change so that I can kind of be returned to that joy.
Oh, right. Well, and the reason why I said like it might actually be harder for. Now, granted, you aren't like most people your age where you do have a lot of things that require your time, even when you're not. You have some time here in the summer now to be prepared for next school year. But if you are someone that maybe you're a single guy and you work a job and maybe you do something else, you actually have a lot of free time. But ultimately, sometimes like almost too much time on your hands equates to less time on yourself, right? Because maybe you are just in the world of Netflix, right, and binge watching things, like you just end
It's
up
not really a break. Yeah.
No, it's not really a break, right? So if you have more things in your schedule, like, like Charlie was talking about, if you have more things in your schedule, it's like, if I don't do this now, I won't do it. So I better do it, right? If I don't take a break today, man, I got like 4 or 5 days of back-to-back things coming up, whereas if you could take a day off and you're like, oh, I could work today and I could maybe do it tomorrow. But like, if things are a little less uncertain or at least a little less planned, like there's less of a chance that you'll actually be intentional about taking care of yourself. That makes sense.
Yeah. Actually, I was talking about this with my roomie earlier or yesterday, I guess, where I was looking at my schedule and I realized that I actually haven't had a weekend in like 2 weeks because I haven't had a single day where I didn't have something on the docket to do for like. It was like 2.5 weeks that I've scheduled straight through. And then even my vacation was like a working vacation. I just looked at it and I said, man, I'm a little like worn out right now. Like I need to recharge. Like I need a vacation from vacation here. Because like the podcast and all that, like I just love doing it. And I've got time on my hands. And so I'm finding ways to fill it and with things that I love. But just understanding you need to take a break. And that also kind of goes into understanding yourself too. And people always give me a weird look when I say this, but I am an introvert. And what that means is not that you're quiet and bashful and whatever. It's about how you recharge, right?
Yep.
And so if I don't get time alone to just be alone and be quiet, man, I don't recharge. So like intentionally scheduling that time too.
Well, and maybe that's, for people out there, I know we should wrap up here pretty soon, but like, if you need to, if you're not good at scheduling time for yourself, you need to figure out what recharges you, right? Like Charlie knows. Like Charlie knows that like you need to step back, right? You need to step back and kind of unplug from not just like technology, but unplug from people for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Where me, on the other hand, like I appreciate those unplugged moments of being unconnected from people, but like I almost need like unstructured social time. You know what I mean? Where it's because a lot of my job right now is social and interpersonal, communication with people. Whereas like right now, actually, as I sit here, as Charlie and I talk together, this is almost a recharge for me, right?
Yeah.
Just be able to sit and talk about things that matter to me and not necessarily be in the customer service realm of things. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny you say that because I was just thinking to myself, like, as much as I enjoy this is exhausting. You're just exhausting, man. You wear me out.
Yeah. Kayla says the same thing. It's fine. It's fine.
All right, everybody. Rule number 2 this week is treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. I hope you guys have an awesome week. God bless.
Yep. God bless you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Gird Up Podcast. If you like what you're hearing on our podcast, make sure you're sharing it with friends and family, men in your life who you think need to hear our message. You can find us on social media, on Facebook under the Gird Up Podcast, and there's a Gird Up community as well there where you can interact with other men on the journey toward Christian manhood. You can find us on Instagram as girdup_like_a_man. If you'd like to help us bring our message to more men just like you all around the world, you can hit up our Patreon account. Type in www.patreon.com/girdup. And finally, please leave a 5-star rating or review on whatever platform you use to listen to our podcast, whether it's iTunes or Spotify. What that does is it helps us get more attention in the podcast world and bring more men to our message. Thank you again for listening to our podcast. Thank you for all the ways you support us and help spread the word. Until next time, go gird up and be the man that God created you to be.